government has historically been a prime victim of fraud, mainly due to, as shown in these three cases, lack of internal controls, extravagant lifestyles being flaunted by the individuals, and analytical anomalies that would have raised suspicion if proper auditing standards were applied. Travis Whitaker will discuss the first case that involves Leonard Francis, president of Glenn Defense Marine Asia, receiving lucrative contracts by bribing officials with cash kickbacks and prostitution. Matt Hiller will show how Ralph Mariano colluded with Russell Spencer to defraud the Navy of an estimated $18 million over 12 years. Matthew Paglia will be presenting the fraud committed on NASA by Michael Dunkel, colluding with Keith Hedman due to the Small Business Administration Section 8A provision. Here's Travis.
Thank you, Adam. I will be addressing one of the biggest government contracting fraud investigations in the history of the Navy. As previously mentioned, the contractor involved is Glenn Defense Marine Asia. Glenn Defense President Leonard Francis is accused of bribing Navy officers with prostitution services and cash in return for insider information. Although Glenn Defense had been found dumping untreated sewage from U.S. Navy ships into protected waters, the Navy continued to give this contractor lucrative contracts. The investigation has charged 7 senior Navy officials, suspended or placed on leave, and the Navy expects that more were involved. The alleged fraud exceeds $20 million and will continue to rise. Symptoms of fraud in this case are experienced among nearly all categories. Accounting anomalies were experienced through hundreds of falsified invoices and price quotes. Internal controls did little to prevent this, especially since 100% identical reimbursement forms were repeatedly submitted. Analytical anomalies discovered the firm taking advantage of contract loopholes, allowing higher fuel prices, incidental services, and local port fees. Paperwork justifying the added expenses was fabricated and contained substantially higher than normal expense accounts. Extravagant lifestyle changes were found mainly through prostitution and one instance where Glenn Defense charged the Navy $1.3 million for a 5-day visit to Port Klang. Many complaints were made by other contractors that the relationship was unfair and that something suspicious was occurring. All of this unusual behavior has given the prosecution sufficient knowledge of the occurrence of fraud. Matt Hiller will now discuss a Navy kickback scheme involving heavy collusion with 2 other entities. Thank you.
Ralph Mariano of Warwick, Rhode Island, a senior systems engineer with the United States Navy's Naval SEAL Systems Command, was the organizer of a fraud kickback scheme that defrauded the U.S. Navy out of an estimated $18 million. He was arrested and charged with conspiracy and theft of U.S. funds. The fraud started in 1999 when Mariano used his position with the Navy to approve overcharged and false invoices. Mariano colluded with Russell Spencer, a subcontractor, to submit the invoices to Advanced Solutions for Tomorrow, a contractor for the U.S. Navy. Mariano also colluded with Patrick Nagel, the CFO of AST, in order to have the overpayments paid for by the U.S. Navy contract funds. Mariano then directed Spencer to disperse the overpayments to Mariano himself and others close to him. $3 million was directed to Mariano from 1999 to 2003. He subsequently received monthly checks from Spencer for $3,500 from 2004 to 2011. Mariano also instructed Spencer to siphon $2.5 million to his father, $1.7 million to his brother, $2.4 million to the staff of AST, and $475,000 to an attorney's business from Warwick. Several symptoms of fraud are present in this case. False and unreasonable invoices were submitted to the Navy for payment. The fact that AST was an approved service provider and contractor concealed the fraud. There was a lack of independent checks. If someone else would have questioned the invoices, this fraud could have been prevented much earlier. Mariano lived an extravagant lifestyle. The FBI reported he spent money on everything imaginable as soon as it came into his account. The triple-person collusion made this particular fraud difficult to detect, and as a result, it lasted much longer than many similar frauds. And now here's Matt Paglia, who will explain how an owner of a company used a shell company to commit fraud against the U.S. government.
Thanks, Matt. The case I will be covering involves Michael Dunkel, who fraudulently obtained more than $4.4 million in government contract payments that should have gone to disadvantaged businesses. Dunkel learned that Keith Hedman, an executive at an Arlington-based security service consultant company, referred to as Company A in court records, illegally controlled Company B. Company B was a participant in the Small Business Administration Section 8A program, which enables certain small businesses to receive contracts set aside for minority-owned and disadvantaged small businesses. Although Hedman controlled Company B had obtained its 8A benefits based on its disadvantaged status of Don Hamilton, an employee of Hedman who gained eligibility due to his Portuguese heritage. Dunkel saw this opportunity to take the contracts that the government was giving to Company B while giving Hedman a 10 to 15% pass-through fee in exchange for Company B, allowing Dunkel to fraudulently use its 8A status. In looking at this case, we conclude that there was many symptoms that can be related to fraud. In order to hide this bribery scheme, Michael Dunkel submitted the fraudulent proposals and invoices. An auditor could have simply audited Company B and seen that it was just a shell company. The scheme overall had an inadequate accounting system and was ran by funneling contracts to Dunkel while he kicked back Mr. Hedman and his employees. The defendants, including Hedman and Hamilton, had previously been sentenced in connection with the government, contracting fraud schemes, and a related bribery scheme. The unusual behavior should have been a red flag for the government when processing the SBA Act. And now, Adam, back to you.
Thank you, Matt. The risk of fraud in the government will always exist. The solution is to minimize the resulting damage and reduce the opportunity of fraud occurring. Thank you.